It's springtime and everything is growing, including population. A population is a community of plants and animals that can reproduce. Today, we're going to take a look at population growth and the factors that influence it.
Wait, before we start, I've got a question. Why isn't the world overpopulated by rabbits? Because they keep multiplying. 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8, 8 becomes 16, and then so on and so on. So why aren't there a ton of rabbits?
Well, Quinn, what you're talking about is called exponential growth. As a population increases, there are more members of the population that can reproduce, and it just gets larger and larger and larger. However, that's not how the real world works. There are things called limiting factors that make it so that a population can't just keep growing forever. Can you think of any?
Disease? Predators? What about food and water shortages?
That's right, Quinn. The things that you're talking about are called density-dependent factors. That means that the bigger the population is, the more the factors come into play. For example, one rabbit in a field would have as much food and water as it wanted, and predators wouldn't really take notice of it. There wouldn't be enough animals to attract the predator's attention, and it would go to a better area. But as the population grows, there may be a shortage of food, and these density-dependent factors would start to affect the population. Density-dependent factors make it so that a population can't just keep increasing forever. Eventually, it hits what's called carrying capacity. Carrying capacity is the maximum number of individuals in a population that the environment can support. It's the biggest the population can grow. If a population goes over carrying capacity, there can be an increase in predators, more disease, and less food and water available because the population is too big. This will force the population below carrying capacity again. The carrying capacity is like the average of what the environment can support.
We've talked about density-dependent factors, things that come into play as the population grows larger. There are also things that can happen which are called density-independent factors. Density-independent factors don't care if a population is large or small. They affect it regardless of size. Kalea, can you think of any examples of the density-independent factors?
Sure, Quinn. Density-independent factors include natural disasters like hurricanes or flooding. There can also be fires and drought and habitat destruction. Now that you know how these factors affect population size, it's time to see how the organisms have adapted. All of the species on the planet can be divided into 2 categories, R-selected and K-selected species. R stands for rate, and R-selected species have adapted to maximize their growth rate. These species want to grow their population a lot, really fast. They live in unpredictable environments, generally have short lifespans, and grow up fast. R-selected species reproduce quickly, but usually only have babies once in their lifetime. They usually have a lot of babies, but they don't really care for them. Most of their young die. The population size of R-selected species is usually below the carrying capacity. It grows a lot fast, but then shrinks back down again due to unstable conditions and a lot of deaths. When R-selected species die, the cause is usually density independent. Remember, density independent factors don't care how big a population is. Their population could be 3 or could be 300. These factors would affect it regardless.
K-selected species are the exact opposite from R-selected species. K stands for carrying capacity, and these species are adapted to get as close to the carrying capacity as possible. They live in stable, predictable environments. That means the environment doesn't change very much. They only have a few babies, but they put a lot of energy into those babies, so they still stay healthy and strong. They usually take care of their young, so they survive to adulthood. Unlike R-selected species, K-selected species tend to have babies multiple times rather than just once in a lifetime. K-selected species usually have a large body size. They have longer lifespans and grow slower than their R-selected counterparts. When these species die, it's often density dependent. Remember, density dependent means the size of the population matters.
Now let's go find some R and K selected species. Look, some ducks. Ducks are K selected species. They take care of their young, they have a relatively long lifespan, and they're kind of big. They live in a predictable environment, the pond.
That's the tiniest turtle I've ever seen. It's about the size of a $50. Did you know turtles show traits of R and K selection? They live a long time, up to 30 years, but they don't much care for their young. They just dig a hole and leave their eggs in there. Oh, there he goes. Look, a dandelion. Yes, I know what you're thinking, but plants can be R-selected too. These are R-selected because when all the petals die, there are a ton of seeds. That's why there's a big ball of fluff on it. And when the wind blows, or someone makes a wish, all of the seeds get spread around, and most of them can't find a good place and can't sprout.
Hey Quinn, I just found another K selected species. It's you! Whoa! Humans are like the best example of K selected species. We have only a few babies at a time, but we take care of them for 18 years, and sometimes even longer.
Yeah, I was wondering what I would be considered as. I never even really thought about that.
Yeah, we have long lifespans, we have a large body size, and we are close to the carrying capacity. We're not much affected by density-independent factors. Remember, density-independent factors are factors that have nothing to do with population size. Mostly, we're affected by density-dependent factors, like the amount of resources that we have to share.
Like most other insects, ants are R-selected species. Because of their short lifespan, quick maturity, they grow up fast, have multiple babies, and have a small body size. Termites are another example for R-selected species. Just like ants, they have a lot of babies, a small body size, and a short lifespan. These are their tracks here. R and K selection isn't just black and white. There are many creatures in between, like turtles. There's also the problem of relativity. Cats are K-selected compared to cockroaches, but are R-selected compared to humans.
Something else we look at when we study a population is its survivorship curve.
How many organisms in a population survive to the end of their lifespan?
Obviously, a human lives much longer than a bird, so this curve shows the percentage of lifespan instead of showing it in years or months. For example, the lifespan of a frog is 1 year. If a frog lives 1 year, it's lived its entire lifespan. That's 100%. That means it's lived the entire thing. But if the frog only lives a half a year, then it's lived 50%, or half of its lifespan. Make sense?
Type 1 represents species like humans. Most humans survive from the beginning of their life to old age, and then everyone starts dying off at the end of their lifespan.
Type 2 represents animals like birds. Birds die at a constant rate throughout their lifespan. A predator doesn't care if a bird is 2 months old or a year old. The birds die at the same rate, which means their curve looks like this. It's a straight line of decline.
Type 3 represents the animals like the muffin. Much of the population dies right after it's born. The ones that survive are strong and can live to the end of their lifespan.
You may have noticed that our selected species are type 3 on the survivorship curve. Most die early in life, but the ones that survive live to the end of their lifespan. You may also have noticed that K-selected species usually represent type 1 and type 2. K-selected species like humans are type 1. Most of us survive from birth and then have a sharp rate of decline, or like the ducks that we saw at the pond.
Understanding population dynamics is important for maintaining the health of our planet's ecosystem.
Biodiversity is the variety of life in an ecosystem, and the more biodiversity you have, the more the planet will flourish.
Each species plays a role in its environment.
A rabbit, for example, keeps invasive species under control by eating them. The management of these invasive species helps other organisms in the environment.
Biodiversity also helps humans.
Many scientific discoveries come from looking at plants and animals, and much of the medicine that we rely on is derived from plants.
Every species is important in the web of life.